Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to A Family Blend. I'm your host, Jason Linton, and today we are joined by the authors of The Real Stepmoms, His Wife, and Their Enemy. And I would like to introduce Rona Neely. How you doing, Rona?
I'm fine. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing well. And I'd also like to introduce Alicia Linton. How are you doing, Alicia?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I am doing well. The third member of the third author, D. Lindsay, is unable to attend, but we're going to go ahead and proceed with the questions, and we're going to go ahead and start off with you, Rona. The Real Stepmoms, His Wife, and Their Enemy. That's the title of the book. Can you explain to us why you came up with that name and why are books like this needed?
Yeah, definitely. The three authors, we went back and forth pondering a good name, a good title for the book. We wanted it to be something catchy. However, we didn't want it to be too controversial. But then we wanted it to be real. So we just went back and forth, and then Alicia, your lovely wife, actually presented this title, and we were like, wow, that's really bold. That's kind of in your face. But we said, you know what, let's go with it because we want it bold, we want it in your face, and we want it to be real. So what better name than The Real Stepmoms? We said his wife, their enemy, because a lot of times a stepmother is often viewed as just his wife. And because she's his wife, she often takes on the role of being everyone else's enemy. So sometimes the question mark could represent whose enemy? Is it the enemy of the biological mom? Is it the enemy of the children? Is it the enemy of the in-law? Or could she be her own enemy? And in some cases, that is definitely the truth. So that's where the title came from. And as far as the books being needed, this book is definitely needed. Just knowing the statistics about blended families, there are like 1,300 new step families that are being formed every day, and 75% of divorced persons will eventually remarry, which is going to make it another blended family. So you have more blended families to be expected than the traditional families that we are used to seeing of the mother-father, biological mother-father situation. But yet there's no resources, there's no help, there's no guidance out there. And so we felt like it would be very important to offer some assistance, something to the mothers, the women, the children, and the husbands to help them through this journey, because that's exactly what it is, a journey.
Awesome. That was really good. I actually read the book, but I'm not going to share my views on it yet. I'll do that later. Alicia, let me ask you this next question. Can you share with us your journey as a stepmom that actually led up to the point when y'all came together to write the book?
Yes. After, pretty much being in a relationship for, I guess it would have been about 4 years at the time, and about a year and a half of actually being married out of those 4.5 to 5 years, it was getting to the point to where, feeling like a permanent figure, feeling like the mom the entire time, even before the marriage, but yet still having those imaginary boundaries that, you feel like you can't cross because you're not mom, but yet you having to hold all the title and you're holding all the position of a mom, and, just inner wars going on with myself, and then to have, Dee present the idea, to me, it was almost like it turned into like a ministry, from the time that I got with her and Rona. I mean, there's so much that Dee has helped me with, but overall, I think, Rona, sometimes I even go back, if, for the people that do get the book, they'll see that, I even go back and read Rona's, because sometimes I feel like she is pulling out and put on paper exactly how I was feeling. And before Dee and Rona, we even spoke about this, I always felt like, am I the only one, or I have to be the only one, and nobody else could possibly be going through the same thing I'm going through. So when Dee presented the idea, to me, that her and Rona had been thinking about this, it was just like, okay, I'm not by myself. And there's so many other step-parents that feel that way because, you know, as Rona said, this book is needed because there's nothing else that's out there that's talking about the real issues that go on inside of blending a family.
Okay. And just so our listeners know, how many children do you have altogether?
Altogether, I'm sorry?
As far as stepchildren and biological children, how many children are all in the equation?
Total, there are 5 girls. There's 2 that are not my biological children, and then I have 3 that are biological, and then one of my oldest, who is not my biological, has a daughter as well.
Okay. And Rona, how many children are part of your family?
We have a wonderful family of 6. We call ourselves the real Brady Bunch. If you know anything about the Brady Bunch, that was not a true depiction of a blended family. They don't show all of the drama and the issues that come along with the real blending. But anyway, we have 6 children together. We have a total of 4 daughters, and we have a set of twin boys. And the dynamic is basically my husband, Tim, has 2 daughters. I have 2 daughters. And then we came together to make twin boys. So that's the dynamics of our blended family. And the ages right now are 17-year-old twin boy, 21, 22, 23, and 24-year-old daughters. And then we have 2 grandchildren from 2 of the girls. So it's definitely an interesting mix.
Very interesting. Okay. And I'm going to jump back to that previous question and ask you, can you tell us about your journey as far as becoming a stepmom and how it led to the book?
Yeah, well, Tim and I met. I'm not going to go through the whole family hookup situation, but we met, and when I first met him, he only had the 1 daughter that I knew about, and I had the 2 girls, and we really felt like we wanted to start a family. And so every single date that we had was a family date, making sure that our girls would, get along well with each other. And we were both just ready to settle down. And then I became pregnant with the twin boys, and that pretty much made it a sealed deal. And we went ahead and we got married in 1995. And then 5 years later, we found out that the mother of his first daughter, she also had another younger daughter, and we found out that this was my husband's daughter as well. That was an interesting turn of events. But we decided that we would, when Dee approached me about writing this book, I thought it was a brilliant idea because Dee and I knew each other from years before even writing this book. We had known each other at this point for about 12 years. And Dee would come to me a lot of times, and she would ask my advice and my opinion about the blended family situation because she had recently blended her family, her husband, Ken, and their children. And so she would come to me, and she would ask my advice and my opinion, and that's how it kind of started. But then, she moved to Greenville, and she met Alicia, and then their relationship began. And she realized, there's a lot of people that are going through the blended family situation, and they have no outlet. And as Alicia said earlier, if we did not have each other to call and to cry on and to laugh with and to laugh at, I don't know how we would have been able to make it. So with God and these 2 ladies, it's been a lot easier to go through a lot of the trials that you go through as a blended family and a stepmom.
Okay. All right. That's a lot to digest right there. Let me get ahead and jump into this next question. Excuse me. Throat was acting up. Okay, Rona. Loving them as your own. That's one of the chapters in the book. Is it difficult to love them as your own? Is there always a difference, something that kind of the parents recognize and the children recognize, or are you able to work past that?
Well, I don't think that it's difficult to love them as your own. However, I think what's difficult is expecting them to love you as their biological mother. That's what my biggest issue was. As I talk about in the book, I put myself pretty much in a fantasy world, and because I was a stepchild myself, I was determined to make sure that there was no difference, that my stepchildren would not feel any difference between them and the biological children. Whatever I did for my biological children, I did for my stepchildren. We didn't even say the word step in our family. It was just, this is my daughter. But I think the best way to answer the question is to take the reflection from the book, and I'll just read that just so that I won't, get off on a rabbit trail. But it says, when I think of a mother's love, I think unconditional love, a love with no boundaries, no conditions, no expectations, and no requirements. A mother's love will cause her to risk her life for her young, to sacrifice everything for her children. From the very moment that a mother's heart beats in harmony with the one that is carried in her womb, love begins. It's innate. Nothing can separate a child from the love of their mother. Is this love the same for a mother and her stepchild? Naturally, no, but I believe it can be developed. To me, I believe love is a choice that we make. We choose to love in spite of the heartache and disappointments that we face. We choose to love even when we don't feel love. Loving your stepchild may not seem as natural as loving your own, but you can choose to love them with the same unconditional love that God has for you. So that's my take and my perspective on it.
That's a great perspective. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of moms, can definitely relate to that right there. Alicia, the next question is for you. When you took on the idea of becoming a stepmom, did you have any idea of what you were signing up for? And was there a point where it was actually like a rude awakening to what you were involved in?
Yes. The rude awakening, I speak on that, definitely. It's like, well, I'll go back to the that I know I was signing up for. No, I didn't. Rona touched on it somewhat. And maybe it's just for the women, maybe it's just for the moms. I'm not sure how the men feel, but we do have this fantasy that everything is perfect and we're going to be this perfect people and perfect family and perfect couple with perfect kids. And you go into it, and I'm thinking that, when we having the fun, we had all the fun times and everything else. It's like, but when the real issues start hitting from, the differences between how my biological children are being raised and the standards I have for them, to where when those boundaries are being crossed by my stepchildren, and I'm really not sure how I'm approached it, because the response, is more of, that was pretty much a factor for me. It was like, how would this respond, and what problem would this response cause for us? So I didn't know I was signing up for it. I don't think anybody goes into any relationship knowing exactly what they're signing up for. But, when you make those vows and when you have committed to something, you still have to stick through it regardless if it looks like, what you was expecting or just completely something off the wall, hurt your feelings, break your heart. You don't sign up for any of that, but that's what you get sometimes, and you just have to roll with the punches and commit to staying into the relationship and, having the love for your children regardless of if, even if they're not loving you back. Rude awakening for me, I would say the worst was after kind of, it's also in the book, is where one of my stepdaughters, we had an issue in the house and, kind of an explosion happened, and I got the "you ain't my mama" after I felt like I had been the only mama for the majority of the last 4 or 5 years of that child's life. And to hear that, it felt like a slap in the face to, like, every love, every sacrifice, everything I've given meant nothing. And here I felt like I was giving and giving and giving and doing as a mother, so I feel I should be respected as such. And then to get that hurt, even though it was coming from a hurt place, it still was a rude awakening to where like, no, I'm not your mother.
Okay.
Can I touch on that just a little bit?
Sure, definitely.
Okay, Alicia was saying that you don't know what you sign up for. I just want to add a comment to that. Basically, we don't know all that's to come. And one thing I did was I went into the whole situation of blended families with a judgment that I held over my stepmother. So I would say that the first thing that you can do to prepare, if you're a single mom and you're about to enter into a relationship, is to not have any judgments over anyone of how a blended family should or should not go, because every situation is different. So you can't really even take this book and say, well, this is what the real stepmoms did, so this is what I'm going to do. Or this is what they said they didn't do, so I'm not going to do it. For every family, there's a different situation, and so there needs to be a different approach. However, I would say that it's quite important that you do read the fine print. Just like anything that you enter into, there are things that you need to pay attention to. There are situations that you need to keep your eyes open to, because just because you get married, it doesn't mean that the situation is going to get better, or it doesn't mean that it's going to all be fixed. So if there's any red flag, red fine print, then you need to make sure that you and your future spouse sits down and communicate. Well, how are we going to handle this if this happens? Well, I noticed that, when I said something to your daughter, you kind of gave me a look. Those are the types of things you need to address pre-marriage, during those premarital sessions, instead of just saying, well, when we get married, then I'll be their mama. No, it doesn't work that way. So I would just add that to it. Read the fine print and make sure that you go into it with wisdom and not, with being naive.
Okay, so kind of go into it with a plan and, address that plan, communicate on that plan regularly.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
A lot of times people just, they get so caught up in the wedding and, oh, this is going to be perfect, and they're not really thinking about the marriage. And when you're in a blended family, it's more than just you and the husband that have to blend and to mix. Now you have a child or two or even three, and in my case, six children that have to blend personalities and everything else. So you definitely need to have some good communication before entering into the marriage.
Great. Thank you for that, for adding that in there. Now let's get and ask you this question, Rona. Can a stepmom make the mistake of overcompensating for the stepchildren?
I'll answer that really quickly. Yes. I did that. Did you purposely ask me that question, Jason?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
I did that. As I said earlier, I was coming from the perspective of a stepchild, and my childlike thinking as a stepchild, I felt that I was mistreated, and I felt like I was the outsider of the family. I felt like I was the Cinderella in the family of my father and his wife and their children. That was from my childlike thinking. And so when I got married, I had made a judgment against my stepmother, and I said, you know what, my stepchildren would never feel like a stepchild. So I overcompensated. I made sure they got extra attention. I made sure they got extra love. I made sure that, I just gave them so much of myself, my time, my finances, everything. But what I failed to realize is that while I was overcompensating for my stepchildren, I was undercompensating, if that's a word. I was not compensating or providing the basic things that my own biological children needed. I was completely clueless. I was so wrapped up into my fantasy world that my own children eventually said to me, actually through the book, that they felt like they were the outsiders, that I showed more attention and love and commitment to the stepchildren than I did my own. So as a grandmother now, I am just making sure that I am careful, that I am not trying to prove a point to the world, to other people who may judge me as a stepmom, and even to myself, that I have to do this and do this extra just to prove my love, because that's all I was trying to do. So now I just love them. And we talk a little bit in our workshop about the different love languages and the love that the kids need. So when you say overcompensating, I guess the best thing to say is to know what your children need so that each one can get the equal amount of love that they are requiring. So the short answer is yes, I think you can overcompensate.
Okay. Thank you for that, being transparent with that. I think that's really going to help a lot of people when they hear that. They may not feel like they're the only ones doing it, or they may wake up to realize what they're actually doing to their biological children or their circumstances. And Alicia, we're going to get ahead and go into the next question, which is to you. Coming from two different worlds, as we do in relationships and with children involved, how critical is it to the success of the relationship to understand the reasoning behind the differences? You know, childhood, the way people are raised. How critical is it to understand it rather than just saying, hey, you know, I agree to disagree? Let's take the time to understand it.
I mean, it's definitely important to understand it so that you can make a plan. I mean, you have to have some type of way to move forward, because just because you understand it doesn't mean you have to accept it, but you have to come to that compromise of, okay, you may have grown up, you know, and I'll just speak on our differences. My standpoint in the book was a little different from the other two authors, and that was because we had a difference in age, we had a difference in geographical upbringing. You know, you're from the north, I'm from the south. You know, everything is yes ma'am, no ma'am. You know, you don't earn respect, you're automatically given respect. And there's just a difference between how we saw things and how our children were to, you know, behave as far as different things. And it was hard for me, but I had to first understand it, that, you know, even though that it's not what I'm used to being in the South, that, you know, I understood that you were also some places that you stand your ground on, and there's some places where you understood it and you accepted that there are differences as well. So what we have to do is compromise to find a balance to where, okay, you may do things this way, you may do things that way, you know, you may have grown up this way, you may have these, you know, different outlooks on marriage or outlooks on raising children, but if it's division between the two plans or the two minds, because it first and foremost, it has to be the husband and the wife. Okay, this is what you're doing, and I don't get it, I don't like it, it's causing a problem for me, because this is, you know, this is your world now, and this is my world, and now we're blending these worlds together. So it has to be some type of plan from the get-go, because if you get into it and there is not a plan and you're just kind of winging it, when a major issue comes up, there's going to be an explosion, because two people are pretty much like at a Mexican standoff. You over here with your face, you know, messed up, and your woman's over here with her face messed up, and it's all based off the fact that both of you were standing your ground on, well, that's the only way that I know how to do something, or that's the only way that I know it should be taken care of. So it's very important on understanding it, but not accepting it if it's going to cause a problem. Just finding that balance and finding that compromise to make sure that everything runs smooth as possible.
All right, and I could definitely vouch for that we went through that a little bit here and there. And the next question is actually for you, Alicia. Another question for you. How difficult is it to establish the boundaries in the beginning, and what are some of the keys that help establish those boundaries?
It is difficult because it is a new thing, and Rona talked about that as well, you know, as far as wanting to overcompensate. In the beginning, I can vouch for doing that as far as just wanting to make sure that I was their friend, you know, because I came into it to where I'm only 12 years older than my oldest, you know, stepchild. So we created more of a friendship more than that, you know, that level of just gaining the respect of, you know, of my stepchild, to where when it was time to become parent, it was hard because that boundary had already been crossed, to where it was just kind of flooding, and, you know, this is my friend, and it's not this is my mom, or this is my parent. So it's definitely important to make sure that, you know, you're more gaining the respect and not trying to be cool and not trying to be the friend, because a parent was not put on this planet to be their child's friend. They're there to be the protector, to be the comfort, to be the disciplinary, and to be the person that guides them. And if all they see is friend when they see you, then the respect level is not there as much as it should be, to where anything that you're giving to them to help them is going to be received well. So it's just more of a communication of knowing how to, you know, what boundaries need to be set and how the plan is going to be for the relationship on towards the marriage. Because if you're just dating, there still has to be that level of respect that you gain towards your stepchild or future stepchild, as well as they gain that respect for you. Because if you're going to be the potential parent, they're going to need to build that, you know, you're going to need to build that respect, as well as they're going to have to start giving that respect to you as well.
If I could touch on that a little bit.
Sure, Ron, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I love to talk. But basically, I just wanted to say that boundaries aren't just for the children. The boundaries need to be for the adults also. And the boundaries need to be set by the husband and the wife, and the husband and wife only. The boundaries cannot come from in-laws. And that's a big problem in any marriage. The mother, my mother-in-law tell my husband this, and my father-in-law tells my wife this. Those ties need to be cut and severed. And so the boundaries are drawn, the lines are drawn by the husband and the wife for that family. Even the biological mother of the children, the ex-wife, ex-girlfriend, ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, whatever the case may be, they don't draw the lines, but they don't draw the boundary lines. It's all based on what the husband and wife decide together. And once those lines are drawn, then they're drawn. And it's up to the husband and wife or whether they want to erase them and redraw them. But they should never go outside of the marriage to determine if the lines need to be redrawn. That's where problems come in, when a child doesn't know their place. So they'll go to their father and to turn the father against the stepmom, or if the child doesn't know their place, they'll go to the mother to turn the two parents against one another, or the ex-girlfriend or the ex-wife can call and get the whole family in an uproar because she's upset about something, and so now you're trying to accommodate her, and vice versa if it was a male. Well, he wants me to know the point is, this is our family. These are the expectations and standards in our family, and if you can't fit within these boundaries, then you are on the outside, and you don't influence and affect what we do. Now, I'm not saying that you don't take into consideration their feelings and other factors, but when it comes to the final decision, it's between the wife and husband, and no one else.
Okay, so you're saying the husband and wife, they have to lay the law down for their house and how things are going to function in their house, and everybody outside, either you're going to agree with it or you're going to be the outside. You're not going to change anything. We will take into consideration your thoughts and your feelings, but this is how it is in this house.
Exactly. As Paul said, as for me and my house.
There you go. There you go.
What you do in your house, that's one thing. And you know what? I even had to realize that I have boundaries. See, as a stepmom, I felt like I could run the biological mom's house. See, my stepdaughter lived with us full time, and so when she would go and see her mother, I would try to dictate what went on in that woman's house. And I had to come to a realization, it was many years later, with a little bit of wisdom, I had to realize I cannot tell this woman what she can and cannot do in her own house, just like she can't tell me what to do in my own house. So just everyone respecting the boundaries of the others, staying in your place so that you don't have a big problem. If you think about it in another context, a boundary is when two plates collide. When you think about the earth, and what happens is you have an earthquake. You have a shaking, you have a rumble. But it can also be constructive where it could build a mountain, and it could be something beautiful that you could actually build out of boundaries. So making sure the boundaries are in their places and everything should flow smoothly.
Okay. And one thing I would add is I think it's very critical to sit down with the children and let them know that this is how it is with the house. Because a lot of times kids could get caught up in trying to figure out what's right for them to do, and they're trying to balance everything. So the communication has to be trickled down to the children to where they understand that, hey, this is what works best in this house, and while we can't control what goes on over there, we hope that the values here carry over everywhere you go.
Exactly.
All right, Rona, we're going to get ahead and go into the next question, which is directed towards you. There's a saying, hurt people hurt people. So as a stepmom, how do you deal with that child who has that hurt and they're projecting that attitude of, you're not my mama?
I think you have to make sure that you are clear in showing and proving to them that you're not trying to be. Again, that was a failure of mine. To be quite honest and transparent once again, I wanted to be her mama. If I could, I would have erased her mother completely from the equation. But I soon realized that was not going to happen. But I think that the best thing for you to do is to start off with communication. That's the key. That's the key word for tonight is communicate. Let that child know, I love your father. He loves me, and I know that I can't be your mom. I can't replace your mom. And I don't want to take her place. And I'm speaking from what I should have done, not what I did do. I can't take her place. I don't expect for you to see me even on the same level as your mother. But I do want to be there for you. I want to be there as your mother would. I want to love you and care for you and do all the things that a mother would do, but I do realize that you have a mother, and I will respect her and I will honor her. I think if we say that to the children from the beginning, then they won't have their defense up. They won't feel like they have to stay loyal to their mother because if in most cases that's what the issue is. The whole you ain't my mama situation is letting you know you are not my mama and you will not erase my mom from this whole equation. My mother was here before you were ever here, and that whole situation. So I think that if they know that you're not their mother's enemy, then they won't automatically assume that you're out to get them or out to get their mom or to take her out.
Okay, and to piggyback off of what you just said, should it be a goal for, let's say, the stepmom or the all the adults involved, for them to set a goal to one day all get along with each other for the kids' sake?
I think that would be an excellent goal to set. Is that everyone learn how to sacrifice their will and their emotions for the sake of the children, because the children did not, in most cases, the children did not ask to be brought into this type of situation. And if it's difficult for adults, just imagine how difficult it could be for children. So I think that when the adults stop being children, then it would make it a whole lot easier to blend. But until the adults can say, you know what, it's not about me right now. It's not about how I feel or my emotions or you hurting my feelings, my, then I think that's when you can see a turn of events taking place in the blended family. The whole term blended is not going to happen if the adults cannot submit their wills for the betterment of the children. Until then, it's just going to be like tossed salad. Everybody just thrown into a bowl and hope it turns out good. But it's not even going to be blended if you don't learn how to get along with one another. However, I would say that you do not lessen your standards. You don't lower your standards just for the sake of peace or getting along with. So if your standard is set, then you keep that standard set and just let everybody know, we have to learn to agree to disagree. This is what I think, this is what I feel, so let's move forward from there.
Let me add in, going back to the you ain't my mom, I just have to touch in on that. A lot of times when, you have the whole hurt people, they are hurting from a place, or it could just be, rebellion at the time, and that's just the way that they want to get you back, or they want to cause, an issue with it. But most of the times that "you ain't my mama" comes from you being in a parent mode, and you're being in that parent role to where either you're instructing them or you're giving them something that they don't like, and because you're not their mother, that's what they come out and say. That goes also back to boundaries, to where the husband, if it's his children, or the wife, if it's her children, the boundary needs to be put in place, and the rule and standard need to be put in place that, okay, this person that I have married, this is your parent. And the same as if I told you to do something, it would be the same extension if when they tell you to do something, it's an extension of me as your parent, that this is also who I have chosen to be in a position to guide you and to discipline you and to love you in the role of a mother or a father. And no, they may not be your biological mother or father. They are the parent that is put in place to love you and care for you just as I have. And it's easier said than done, but at the end of the day, if that's put in place and they understand that from the beginning, it's not going to create those situations to where you can pull that card just because you hurt. Because at the end of the day, if your parent is doing something and giving you something because this is what you need, then it's not okay just to say, okay, well, you're not, or I'm not your mama, so okay, this is how you felt at the moment. It's never okay for that card to be played. So I just wanted to make that clear. That yes, they may be hurt, but it needs to come back to a situation of why do you feel you was able to play that card.
Okay. I wanted to jump in on that, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep moving forward here. The next question is for you, Alicia. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay. In the book, there was a section where you interviewed the husbands. What interesting feedback did you get from the husbands as far as the whole scenario?
Just the way that there was two that played a part of me. One, the way they feel torn, where you have, since pretty much all of the stepchildren are girls, the role it plays on how, a man's woman is his queen, and then a man's daughter is his princess. And having to deal with being torn in between, this little girl who's known you, her whole life and has had your heart, and to now the queen of your life having to come, and you're torn between, you got your daughter over here, she mad, and then you got your wife over here, and she mad, and you stuck in the middle still trying to please both. That perspective of, how it tears the husband or tears, the other parent in regards to it, that was something that really made me, think a little bit more on the situations and, that can be created. And also just seeing, from the husband's standpoint of, giving that information to their children, that this is my queen and, she will be first. This is my wife. This is who God has blessed me with. So it's not like, I'm putting her like she's more important to you, than you are. But, there's just a place in, the household where everybody is. So that was a great perspective for me, just seeing the husbands, take that role.
Okay. Rona, did you want to add into that?
No, I think she pretty much covered it. When I talk with Tim, a lot of times that's what his response is that he often felt caught in between. I know that he's even joked with some of you, Ken and Jason, about writing a book from the men's perspective. And he said he could even see the image on the front of the book where it would be one man and he would be torn in half like a sheet of paper, the wife pulling on one end of his arm and the children or child pulling on the other side, and it's just tearing them apart. And I think that represents their heart of how a man feels when they are caught in the middle. So Alicia did a great job explaining that.
Okay. And me, Tim, and Ken, we are going to follow up on that conversation in the near future. And let me ask you this question, Rona, since we talked about the feedback you received from the husbands. What kind of feedback did you receive from the children when you interviewed them?
Well, it was shocking to me, but one commonality that I found from all three situations, from Alicia's situation, mine, and Dee's, were from our biological children. We asked one particular question about did anybody feel like they were the outsider, or did they ever feel like they had to compete? And I remember Sierra, who is my oldest child, and Maya, which was Alicia's oldest child, and Kiara, who was the oldest child in Dee's household at the time. All three said the same thing, that they felt like when the step siblings moved into the home, that they took their place, that they did not have that first or the oldest role anymore. And that was an eye-opener for all of us, that we didn't realize what we were doing to the children as far as positions in the family. Being the oldest child marks a lot, and it says a lot for a child. So to have someone else move in and kind of push you to the middle or to the back, that was very hard for them. And I remember Sierra, my oldest, saying specifically that she did not like the fact that Chantel was coming in and taking the place as the oldest. Not only that, she was taking basically the mentorship of her younger sister. So now Kiki, which is Sierra's youngest sister, didn't look to her anymore. She looked up to Chantel. So all three of our children said that in the book. As far as our stepchildren, their responses, I'm trying to think of a particular question. Give me a second to flip through the book, if you don't mind. I can't think of anything right now. I do remember one particular question that was asked of the stepchildren, and we asked if they called their stepmother by their name or mom, and they had different answers. Some of them said, I called them by their first name. Some of them said, no, I called them mom. Some of them said, I chose to call them mom on my own. But then the question of why came along. And I know that as a stepmother, that's the most thing that's what you would want to hear the most, is for the child to call you mom. However, I think that it's important that as new parents and new families begin to blend, that they don't force that on the children. One thing that Kayla brought out, which was very, very enlightening to me, is that she felt like she would be dishonoring her mother. I'm paraphrasing that, but pretty much a disrespect to her own biological mother by calling Dee mom. She felt like she should be loyal to her mother and call no other woman mom, regardless of what the person was doing or what role they were playing. But she only had one mom as far as the title. And so I had to respect that. I thought that was brave of her, and I thought that it was very eye-opening to look at it from that perspective. So, yes.
That's interesting. Because as you mentioned, it's a sense of loyalty, and it's a sense of that relationship that they still hold on, even though it's not working out the way they wanted to. That is maybe one of the last things that they actually can hold on to, and it can mean a lot to a child.
That's right.
Okay. All right, Alicia, we're going to go ahead and present you with the next question. Okay. You've been a stepmom for a while, and you've actually written a book about it. What have you learned since writing the book? When you look back, what has hindsight taught you?
The easiest answer for that would be I am not their mother. But honestly, writing the book, it was, we mentioned it earlier before, it was a ministry. Because, I was fresh into it when we started writing this book, so it seemed like every chapter was fresh off the dome for me. A lot of editing had to be done, thank Lord for Rona. A lot of editing had to be done because sometimes
Amen.
The situations were, huh?
I said amen.
Some of the situations were so fresh that, the emotions were raw for me. So I think just learning now is just being more of an adult about it. And not being as selfish in a situation about it is that, you have to realize that you are all in this together, and it can't be, well, this is how I feel all the time. It doesn't fly when you're in a blended family. As though, well, this is the way I'm going to do it, or these are my kids, or this is my house, or, any of that. Once you blend a family, there's no more I, or there's no more my. And you have to get under that understanding that, okay, if I continue to stay in the my and I, then we'll never be a we, and this we will end real fast. This marriage will end, this relationship will end, and here we'll have a whole bunch of people who just had another season of their life become, broken. And, I've grown in understanding that, when you sign up to be in a blended family, it is one of the most difficult things to do, because if it is another shattered piece in a life, how do you continue moving forward? Just thinking of it that way, I think, is what I learned the best. If you walk away from a situation because it got too hard, in the situation of a blended family, how do you move forward when you have kids that aren't biologically somebody's, child, but they're now attached to a situation that two adults could not come together and compromise to make work, and now there's another life and another, uncomfortable situation, an uncomfortable conversation, and an uncomfortable relationship that is going to move forward in broken pieces. So for me, it was just a lot of growth of knowing how to, stick through storms and stick through understanding that just because something didn't come from you and it's not a different, if it's a different way of, train of thought, it doesn't mean that you can't figure out a compromise to make it work, so that, the love that you built as two people can overflow into the whole family.
Interesting and powerful. Okay. Another question for you, Alicia. And we're going to kind of go into, what advice would you give a single mother who's holding off having a relationship until her kids are grown and outside of the house?
Well, for me, I would feel she's selling herself short, but I also understand that maybe she doesn't want to deal with having to, because like I said, just a moment ago, the whole thing of these are my kids, and and women get this problem which causes a lot of issues in blended families. You get the whole, these are my babies, and ain't nobody going to say this, or ain't nobody going to talk to my. But at the end of the day, if what the other parent is bringing to the table is beneficial to a child, having two strong, loving parents is better any day than one. And regardless of how hard it may seem, anything that is worth anything is going to have to be worked for. You have to work at it. You have to, it's just like a garden. You can't go out there, plant a seed, cover with dirt, and walk off and never go back and prune it, never go back and till the soil, never go back and water it. So anything that is worth it is going to be hard work. It has to take time. It has to take, commitment. So it's just like, if a single mom wants to sit there and wait out on, I feel like she could be missing out on things, but also keeping her children from having an understanding of being in a family and what God stood for as a family, a husband, a wife, and the children. I feel like she's cutting her, she's selling herself short as well as her children.
Okay. Rhonda, would you like to add into that one?
No, I agree with Alicia in some of the context that, a mother has to do what's best for a child, or a father who is a single parent has to do what's best for his child at that time. Right then, his commitment is to the child, and until he marries, that commitment remains to that child's priority, first priority. So a mother or a father would know their child, they would know their family dynamics, and say, do we really have time? Or do we have the desire to, to bring in another person? I do think that it's important that mother talks to the child and say, I really do like him. I really do love him. How would you feel if we were to get married? I think that's very, very important that the children have a say, or at least are included in the discussion about it because, like I said earlier, you don't want to just throw them into the equation and expect them to conform to what you're wanting them to conform to. So if they're old enough, give them an opportunity to express their feelings about it. You never know. The child may say, well, yeah, I really do think that he would be a good dad. I really think he would be a good husband to you. So sometimes we underestimate our children and we think that they don't understand, but they really do.
I could definitely vouch for that when I was growing up. Okay, so Rona got a question for you here. What advice would you give a mother who's struggling with letting her stepfather discipline the children?
Well, that one's kind of hard. It goes back to what Alicia was saying a little bit about the different types of discipline. It could be what is the issue? Like, why is she having the issue? Is it his methods of discipline? Is it the attitude behind the discipline, or is it just the discipline period? So that question is kind of difficult to attack.
And let's just say she's approaching it from being an overprotective parent, to where she feels that those are her babies and he doesn't know them, or he may be a little too harsh on them. But she loves him and she's giving her his time and planning to marry him. Should that be something that's a determining factor if that relationship should move forward?
Yeah, it's definitely, because it will make or break the relationship, especially if the kids can pick up on it. If there's any disagreement on the discipline method, that needs to be discussed first. That needs to be one of the first things. How do you discipline? Well, why do you feel like that's the best way to discipline? Well, I don't agree with that. This is what I feel. And if you all can't get past the engagement part or the discussion of it as just dating, it doesn't really need to go any further. I actually have a cousin, my cousin and best friend, who she would not date a guy. She ended the whole relationship because he said something to her children about, doing their chores, and she did not like him saying it. She felt like he had overstepped his boundaries. And so she ended that relationship real quick. And I couldn't say, well, shame on you, because I'm not going to be in the marriage. It's not going to be me the one trying to work this thing out. So I think that the woman needs to decide, how would I feel if this man disciplined my child? Am I okay with this? And if she's not, then she needs to end the relationship, because it is absolutely not going to work. Or she needs to go back to the previous scenario where she just waits until the kids are out of the house. But even then, once the kids are out of the house, they always come back. I'm learning that as my children are adults now. And there's still boundaries and things there's still boundaries that you have to set, even as adults. No, you cannot do this in our home. No, you won't act this way in our home. Even though you're an adult, we still have expectations and rules. So I think that it just definitely needs to be approached carefully. However, I think that the step-parent needs to be patient, and I think that they don't need to try to rush into the situation too soon, because if so, then you automatically have walls of defense that's being built. And then you have issues with the biological parent who, don't put your hands on my baby, don't let that woman ever touch my child, that type of situation. So I think that it definitely needs to be, that's the number one thing that needs to be talked about and discussed and settled before marriage.
Interesting. I just wanted to share, I was actually speaking with a coworker a couple of days ago, and he was talking about the kids, and he had mentioned that one of the kids was acting up in school or something, and I asked him what did he do about it, and his response was, those aren't my kids. He'll let her handle it. And I on one of my conferences with the men, we talked about, the fathers having to step in and, take that role, because that's what children do need. He has to be, he has to come correct. He can't just be abusive or rude, but, if he shows love, then he should be able to discipline those children at the same time. But there's a lot of times when, like I mentioned, mothers can be overprotective. Maybe it's because of the previous relationship where the children may have been neglected, abused, or whatever the case may be. That man should be given a fair chance. And as you mentioned, it needs to be communicated early and often on what are the best methods to reach the child and to get the child to do what needs to be done so they can be functioning properly when they become adults.
Right. I mean, and one thing, is even after maybe you're in a situation where you're already married and you're like, okay, well, we didn't talk about it, so now what? Do we divorce? No, you don't divorce. You still have to sit down and say, okay, we didn't do this before marriage, so let's do it now. But you don't ever discuss discipline in front of the children. That is a no.
Amen.
You never do that because those children will play you like a fiddle. So never discuss the discipline issues in front of the children. That needs to be something done, needs to be done away from home. Sometimes it's just good to just take a walk or maybe go out to dinner and have a discussion like that so the kids can't even pick up on any emotions from either one of you, because when they do, it's over. It's now they'll be having you fighting against each other, and what they did that requires the discipline won't even be settled. So that's the best way to approach that.
Okay, great feedback on that one. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up real quick. Alicia, where can your book be ordered, and how can people contact you?
Okay, well, the book, you can go to our website, therealstepmoms.com. You can place an order there. It's also available through Amazon.com, also in a Kindle version for those who, are more technologically savvy and don't actually go and buy hard copy books anymore. You can also download the Kindle version through Amazon as well.
Okay, and if someone wanted to send you, let's say, a personal situation that they're dealing with, Rona, where would they send that to?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
If, let's say, someone had a personal question or personal situation that they were dealing with and they just wanted some one-on-one feedback, how could somebody get in contact with y'all?
Okay, you can actually hit us up on our website at www.therealstepmoms.com, or you can email us at info@therealstepmoms.com. We also have some different online chats where you can actually go on and you can post questions and we'll respond to those. We're also on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook. So there's more than one way to reach us. And you could also request a contact by phone. All you have to do is send us an email or a message through our website or Facebook and in the inbox, and we'll definitely give you a call. So we are touchable. We are able to be contacted, and we are all about saving marriages and saving families.
Okay, great. And Rona, as far as you had mentioned before, workshops, can you share a little bit more information about the relationship building workshops and explain if they're good for the entire family to participate?
Yes, we offer a blended families workshop. This is not a women's workshop. This is not a women's conference. It's a family workshop. So we would invite husbands, wives, and the children. Let's go ahead and open it up to everybody. Bring the biological mom, too. Bring the biological dad. Let's go ahead and fix this thing right now. But we have sessions, and we have about 6 sessions in the workshop where we cover boundaries. We cover the circle of influence, the love languages. We talk about the did I sign up for this and the 2 different worlds that the children are trying to balance. So there's a lot that we cover, and we have breakout sessions. And during the breakout sessions, the men are just with the men and our husbands and having the conversations and asking questions. And the women are with the authors, Neely Shindy. And then we also have a breakout session for children, which is very, very good for them because a lot of times they do not open up and share their real emotions with their parents or their step parents. So we would love to do a booking with you. If you're listening, if you're out there, just reach out to us, contact us, and we'll set something up. We'll come out, and we do the free booking. So this is not going to cost your organization any more than the expense of maybe printing the books and setting up things for the workshop. So we just want to bless families. We want to heal families, and we want to restore families.
Great. And I did receive an email question, and I'll go ahead and present that to you, Alicia. The question was, how do you establish a relationship with your spouse's children that will foster a healthy and safe relationship for the kids, but you don't want the kids to feel like you're trying to take their mother's place?
That one is kind of hard because it kind of goes back to what I spoke of before, because I had that issue to where you want to just all have that feeling that you're there for them. You don't want to feel like don't overcompensate. Don't move outside of your normal self or become fake in any way. But you just want to kind of set up that relationship to where, hey, I'm here. If it's just you guys go somewhere and it's not, the other parent, the biological parent involved, just go and you do things and you kind of keep that boundary to where between friend and also just, okay, this is another role model, if anything, in my life. You have to make sure that what you're bringing to the table is positive, because you can't foster a relationship with somebody if you're not a role model to them. You can't, expect them to look at you as, with any type of respect or show you any type of respect if you're coming into it and you're messy. So you just have to go into it, and also go into it, with pretty much what expectations you expect from the child, but, not demanding them from the beginning, because the respect has to be gained from both parties.
All right. And did you want to touch on that, Rona?
Yeah, I would just say 2 words: trust and positivity. And I think Alicia hit on that. I think it's key that you build trust with that child by clear communication, making sure that they understand your motives are pure, and that there's no negative talk about their biological parent, not even negative looks, because the children will pick up on that. Because as soon as they feel like you do not like their parent, then they are not going to be willing to form a relationship with you. Even they may have some times where they speak negatively about their parent at the heat of the moment. Maybe they're angry at their parent, but never agree, never say a negative thing about their parent, because that relationship is unconditional between a mother and a child, or a parent and their child. So when you have shown them, okay, I don't like them either, then when they do restore their relationship, they're going to remember, well, I remember you never liked her anyway. So just make sure that you always remain positive, even in the midst of negativity.
Great point.
That was awesome.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for your time, for your wisdom, and for your transparency. I look forward to receiving feedback and continuing to share this conference feedback with everyone that does have a need for it. And I would just ask Rona, if you don't mind, if you would just close us out in prayer.
Yes, dear Father, we just thank you right now for this opportunity to bless families who are listening. And we just pray that these words not only just penetrate or go into their minds, Father, but it penetrates their hearts, that this situation, this conference will actually change lives, that it will change families, that it will restore and save them. And, Father, we just thank you and we just glorify you. And we realize that we could not have done this on our own. We did not do this on our own, but we put our faith and our trust in you. We thank you for your son, Jesus, who died for our sins, who died for us, and who made a way for us. And we just thank you and we glorify you. We give you all the praise and the glory for this book. We give you all the praise and the glory for these opportunities to minister, because that's what this is, a ministry. And we just thank you. We just pray that you would just bless those who are listening. We pray that it not just be something that they hear, that they actually apply it. In Jesus' name we pray. We thank you. Amen.
Amen. Okay, and on that note, I'm going to say good night. I believe Alicia did get disconnected.